Well, welcome to the Parents and Caregivers as Partners Conference for 2024, and thank you for coming. My name is Dottie Irvin, and I will be guiding you through this presentation today. We'll start with our land acknowledgement. The land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. My presentation is called The Equity of Phonological Awareness in the Early Years, and I will take you through step by step. There'll be some edu jargon peppered throughout. However, I will do my best to define all of those terms for you and answer any questions that you may have. A little bit about me. I've been a teacher with the Toronto District School Board for 24 years. Prior to that, I taught at a Montessori school, and I also taught English in Spain for a few months prior to that. Most of my career, I've worked in the primary years, so kindergarten to grade 2, and I worked in the speech and language department for 11 years, focusing on early language development and early literacy development in senior kindergarten students. I've got a master's in science of elementary education, and I have specialist certifications in both kindergarten and reading. And because of my work in the speech and language department, I have a lot of training in early language development and early literacy development, which has been great for me as professional development when I return back into the regular classroom setting. I'm in the process of taking my coursework to apply for the vice principal to principal transfer, and I'm also taking courses to become a certified yoga instructor. I love spending time with my animals. This is Princeton, my German Shepherd Rottweiler cross, who is 11. Today is actually his 10th anniversary of being adopted, and this is Mickey, my cat. So what is phonological awareness? There's a lot of talk about it now with the Right to Read report from the province, and it is a huge focus, especially in the early primary years. Phonological awareness is sort of an umbrella term that encompasses a whole bunch of different early literacy, pre-literacy skills. So it's the ability to hear and manipulate language at the oral level. And it's a pre-literacy skill, which means it's a listening skill. You don't need to know letters in order to be able to develop these skills in your children. It's closely related to oral language development. And it's a key predictor of reading and writing success as children move into the end of kindergarten and into grade 1. It encompasses word and syllable awareness, onset and rhyme, which I'll explain more later, and sound awareness. I'm not going to include word awareness, as that's typically a skill that's developed in toddlerhood. So I'm going to be focusing more on the skills that we will be working on in junior kindergarten and into senior kindergarten. And the phonological awareness skills directly transfer into reading and writing, and I'll show you how. So phonemic awareness, which is under the umbrella of phonological awareness, it's the most advanced level of phonological awareness because it involves discrepant individual sounds. So it's being able to change sounds in words, delete them, add them, and it emerges during the kindergarten years. So includes all the following, which are critical for reading and writing success, which is phoneme isolation, which means being able to isolate one sound in a word, phoneme blending, which is blending the sounds in the words, and phoneme segmentation, which is stretching out the sounds in words. So not all children need systematic and explicit instruction in phonological awareness and phonemic awareness skills, but it's the kind of thing that is beneficial for all students. Some children need it in order to become successful readers and writers, and others learn it inherently, but it's still a beneficial thing for all students to learn, and it can be easily supported at home. So Here we go. What can you do to support your child? So these games can be played on the go, wherever and whenever. And you can play them in the car because, again, they're listening games. They don't include paper and pencil. You don't have to be looking at anything. So you can do them in the car. You can do them at home while you're engaging in any sort of activity, such as folding the laundry, or if you're cooking or baking with your child. So these things can be done anywhere. I like to call them listening games. I don't bother with terms like phonological awareness with my kindergarten students. So I call them listening games, and I throw them in throughout the day during transitions. So that's a perfect time as well at home. You can throw them in when, you know, you're getting ready for bed, getting your toothbrush ready, whatever it is at home. So before you play these games with with your children, there are a few important things that you need to know. In the English language, there are stop sounds and there are continuous sounds. So a stop sound is a sound that is really short, and a continuous sound is one that you can extend. So a stop sound is a quick, for the letter T, it's a T. So I find that some teachers, and I even find a lot of videos on YouTube that help with phonological awareness skills, say the sound for T, a T, but that's actually two sounds, T, so you really want to keep those stop sounds really short and crisp. So instead of T, it's T. And for a continuous sound, it's a sound you can prolong. So an S, you can do a S. For a Z, it can be a Z. So I've just outlined some letters that are stop sounds. So B is B as opposed to B. C is K, which instead of a K, etc. And when it comes to letters that make a continuous sound, A is ah, so it's something you can prolong for a long period. F, just for a few examples. And there's also digraphs. So digraphs are two letters that make one sound. So for SH, it's sh, for example. And for a stop digraph, CH says ch, so it's very short and crisp. So I usually start the kindergarten year by focusing on syllable awareness, and I always start any phonological concept with a child's name. So I find if you start with a child's name, names are really important to them. So you can use their name, you can use your name, you can use the names of different family members, family pets, and that helps to get them really engaged, and especially when you can relate to something that's important to them. So I like to make this an active physical um, activity. So you can clap the syllables in a word, you can tap the syllables in words, you can jump the syllables in words, you can count them on your fingers. So you pair one action for every syllable. And you can interchange the word syllable with parts as well. And you can also use counters like cereal or toys, your fingers when you're counting syllables in words. So if I say to a child, clap or tap the syllables in this word, pineapple, and then they would, you can't see me tapping, so I'm going to use clapping. Pineapple, pineapple. There are 3 syllables in the word pineapple. If you're looking at a word like duck, and you say, how many syllables are in the word duck? Duck is 1. Sometimes children will do something like this, duck, duck. And you'll say, wait a minute, is it duck or is it duck? And then they'll quickly be able to fix that. So you can also do syllable deletion. And I find this is one of my with my students is one of their favorite games because they find it really fun. So you take a 2-syllable or a 3-syllable compound word, and if you do a Google search, you can get a whole list of them online. And so an example for that is say rainbow. Say it again, but don't say rain. So bow is left. So you're teaching them to manipulate syllables by removing them. And when you're working with syllables, that's kind of an earlier skill, and that helps to prepare them for when they're trying to delete one sound or isolate one sound. Say the word butterfly. Say it again, but don't say fly. Butter is left. And if your child masters this really quickly, you can start to really challenge them with other words that you delete syllables from. So another example is say the word computer. Say it again, but don't say come, which means the leftovers pewter. So they're non-words that they're deleting and are left, but it gives them a really good opportunity to think. So another example, say cucumber. Say it again, but don't say burr. Cucumber. Then you move into, once kids have mastered syllables, you move into initial and final sounds. So now they're being able to isolate and play with one single sound. And the initial sound, the first sound, is always the easiest. Oh, I just have someone in the waiting room I'm letting in. Hello, welcome to our new joiners. We've just gotten into it a little bit, but we're just starting on isolating the first sound in words. So phonological awareness skills are all games that you can play orally with your child. So initial sound, so that's the first sound in a word. So you can do a phoneme. So a sound is a phoneme. So you can do a phoneme isolation. So you're isolating one sound. So that's the ability to recognize the first sound in a word. So for example, what's the first sound in the word sun? I find it's easier to teach kids this skill by using continuous sounds at the beginning of words, such as opposed to a stop sound, which is a short sound. Cat. What's the first sound in cat? K. But you aren't able to isolate that sound and prolong it if you're trying to support a child. So if you're saying, what's the first sound in sun? You can really stretch out that first sound. What's the first sound in sun? Oh yeah, I hear that sound. If they're having a lot of trouble with it, you can give them two choices. You can say, what's the first sound in sun? Is it a s or is it a g? And then hopefully between the two, they'll be able to discriminate which one is the right one. Phoneme identification involves the ability to identify the same first sound in words. So you're going to give them a series of words that they hear. What's the same first sound in these words? Sun, sock, scissors. And again, they would hopefully say this, but again, if they're having difficulty, you can say, is it a t or is it a s? That's the same in sun, sock, scissors. Phoneme categorization is being able to recognize which word doesn't belong in a set of words. So you can say, which one doesn't belong? Which one starts with a different first sound? Sun, leaf, sock, scissors. And they will pick the word leaf because it starts with an l sound. So onset and rhyme, these are some jargony literacy skill words, but you may hear about them as your child starts to learn to read. And rhyme is different than the rhyme that we think of when we think of the word rhyme, that's spelled R-H-Y-M-E. So the onset is the first unit of a word, so the first sound in a word that you can remove or play with. So example, the k in cat, or the s in sat, or the d in dog. And with a digraph, the sh in sheep. So that's the onset. The rhyme is the group of letters that follow that first sound, that follow the onset. So usually it's a vowel and the final consonants. So the at in cat, the eep in sheep, the og in dog. And so not all words have onsets, but a lot of the words that you might be familiar with, if your child is already in school, that are classified as the word family, like cat, sat, mat, rat, bat, all of those have onset and rhyme. So it's an important skill for early readers because it helps them to decode words that they don't know, because they can chunk those words. So if they already know how to read the word at, then if they know how to, you know, sound out that first initial onset, then they'll be able to read the words bat, sat, mat, fat, all of those. So here's the rhyme that we consider as the traditional word rhyme. So rhyming is a rhyming awareness. It's a receptive task. So that means it's a listening task. So you can give them two words and then they have to discriminate whether or not those two words rhyme. And that means having the same ending chunk, the other rhyme. I don't know who decided that these were the words they were going to use. It's very confusing, I know. So rhyming is an important skill because it really helps to boost children's abilities to read and write, but it's not a critical skill. More recent research has shown that rhyme is important, but it's not the be all and end all of phonological awareness skills. So you can give your children an example like, do these words rhyme? Bat, cat, bat, cat. Yes, those rhyme. So they've got a different onset, but they have the same rhyme. Different onset, b and k, but the same rhyme, at. The other example is you can have them figure out what word does not rhyme. Bat, cat, fork, mat. And ideally, they will figure out it's the word fork. If your child has gotten good at discriminating rhyme, whether being able to figure out if words rhyme or don't rhyme, then you can have them starting to produce rhymes. So they can generate rhymes. That's an expressive task, which means it's a speaking task. It's a little bit later developing. It's a little bit harder for them. But so what you're going to do is you're going to manipulate that first sound. So that's that first onset in a word. And you can do different tasks with this. So the tricky thing about rhyme is they need to be able to isolate that first sound in a word. They need to be able to remove it, and then they need to be able to substitute another sound in it. So these are different ways that you can support your children if you're trying to teach them to play with rhyme. So for example, if you said to them, let's rhyme with the word cat. So you can say, take away the k in cat and put in a s. If they're having a hard time with that, they could say, what rhymes with cat? Let's try starting with the sounds. And then you can kind of give them a lead. Cat. And then give them a pause and see if they can add in that. And then if they're still having trouble, you can say, let's start with the sound cat. And if they're still having trouble, you can even start the beginning of that rhyme. Cat, sat, and then hopefully they'll be able to finish it. Cat, sat, they rhyme. Then once they've mastered sort of the initial sounds, then you can move into the final sound. So that's the last sound in a word. And first, they'll learn how to isolate that sound. So that's the ability to recognize the last sound in a word, hearing it. So you can say, what's the last sound in the word? Bus. And you can really prolong that. And you can even use your fingers too. Bus. To see if they can hear that at the end of bus. And then it's a matter of can they identify the same last sound in a word? So what's the same last sound in these words? Bus, dress, kiss. And then you can really enunciate that at the end. That's the advantage of using that continuous sound, as I mentioned earlier. Another thing you can do is phoneme categorization, same as with initial sounds, but now it's with final sounds. So the ability to recognize the word that doesn't belong in a set of 3 or 4 words. So which of these words don't have the same last sound? Bus, dress, cat, kiss. And I find in my class, I use a lot of visual support. So I have this little green light, yellow light, red light. And when I hold it up, if I'm focusing on first sounds, I'll point to the green light. So I'll say, what's the first sound in sun, sun. So you can use that, and you can also use the red light for the last sound. So I find having visual supports are really helpful as well. Next is when we're getting into the really tricky part. So that's using those phonemes, so the individual sounds in words, to learn to blend them together. So in this cute little cartoon, you've got 2 little hedgehogs. One is blindfolded because they don't need to look at a letter. They don't need to see the word. They just need to listen carefully. And so the one hedgehog is saying, what's this word? K, and then the other little blindfolded hedgehog is able to put those sounds together to say the word cat. So phoneme blending, that's the ability to listen to a sequence of sounds, which are phonemes, and then combine them to form a word. So I find, especially when you're introducing this concept to young children, it's really helpful if you can give them a category. So I'm going to give you the name of an animal, or I'm going to tell you a food you like. So this way it kind of narrows down what the word might possibly be. So if I say, I'm going to give you an animal, at, or I'm going to give you an animal, or, and then they have to blend in those sounds. So it's more supportive when it's also paired with visuals or manipulatives. So in the teaching world, anything that you can touch and move around is classified as a manipulative. So it means you can manipulate it and move it around. So I always start with children's names. So whose name is this? That's my name. E. And you can do that at home too. Whose name is this? Mom. Dad, dad. What animal is this? Just like I mentioned earlier, at. Or what word is this? Ish. So just because a word might have more than 3 letters, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have more than 3 sounds. So in the word fish, there are 4 letters, but there are only 3 phonemes. Ish, because that SH is, like I explained earlier, a digraph where you have 2 letters that make one sound together. The next skill is called phoneme segmenting. So that is stretching the letters or the sounds in a word. So again, you're not using letters. It's an auditory skill, so children are just listening. So this is the hardest phonological awareness skill, and it's one of the more later developing skills. So I find by the time in kindergarten, I'm usually addressing this around the spring, because then they've solidified all of the other phonological awareness skills prior to that. So you can see in the little picture in front of you, the word is ship. So, the word is ship. The word ship has 3 sounds. Let's stretch it out. Sh, eh. So with phoneme segmenting, there are a whole bunch of ways that you can approach it and different ways to support your child while they're engaged in this activity. So again, that's the ability to break up a word into its individual sounds or stretch out those sounds. And the number of words or the number of sounds in the word, again, as I mentioned, does not necessarily equal the number of letters in that word. And the beauty of the internet now is if you're not sure, you can Google anything. You can look up, different words that you want to use when you're working on segmenting with your child, and it will give you a list of simple words and how many phonemes that they have. So I find, especially at the beginning, it's really important for children to know how many sounds to listen for, as opposed to just being told, just being asked to segment them. So I find that if I say, okay, your word is cat, cat has 3 sounds, then they know that they need to listen to the 3 sounds, because sometimes they might say cat and they'll say 2. But if you show them that there's 3, cat, oh, you missed a sound. Let's stretch it out a little bit more. K, at. And again, I find it works best when you pair it with visuals or with manipulatives that they can move. And I'll show you a few on the next slide. So for example, the word shoe, there are 2 sounds, sh, ooh. In the word goat, again, there are 4 letters, but the O and the A in the middle it's a digraph that makes one sound. So there are 3 sounds in the word goat. G, O, T. And then in frog, 4 sounds. G. And then you can see there's one of the visuals that you can use with manipulatives, and I'll show you on the next page here. So I like to use a string of beads, because it's just easy, because I can hold it up for the children to see when I've got them on the carpet in a large group. But I'll move the number of beads that I need, and I'll say, your word has 3 sounds. How many, stretch out the sounds in the word dog, and then they'll take their 3 beads and go d, g. Again, you can see with the example with the little bed, you can use cubes and you can show them it has 3 sounds. B, ed. And you can even make little sound maps called say it and move it. So you have some sort of object. It could even be cereal. It could be a little treat. And they move each item as they say each sound. So in the word frog, they would say ah, g, and they would move each item along. So the big connection is, why are we teaching phonological awareness skills? So teaching children to play with and manipulate sounds at the oral level directly connects into reading and writing. So that's what I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an explanation of right now. So phonemic awareness versus phonics. We hear about phonics all the time. Phonemic awareness might be a new term for all of you, but as we know, phonemic awareness, that is the ability to play with and manipulate the individual sounds in words, and that is a purely oral skill. There are no letters involved, there's no print involved. It's just a listening skill. So that includes all of the things that we just talked about: isolating an individual sound, blending sounds together to make a word, segmenting sounds to hear how many sounds are in the word. Those are critical skills for reading and writing success. Phonics, it's the relationship between the sounds and the written symbols. So that's knowing that the letter T says T, the letter S says. With digraphs, the letters S and H combine together to make the sound sh. And so that refers to the ability to connect the phoneme, so that's the sound you hear, with the grapheme, which is the letter or the letter combination if you're talking about digraphs. So that's the big difference. But phonemic awareness directly correlates with phonics, because once children have the phonemic awareness, once they know letters and they're able to pair letters and sounds, then they're able to apply their knowledge of that phonemic awareness directly into what they know about letters and sounds. So there are 44 phonemes in the English language. In kindergarten, we teach roughly, I usually cover about 32-ish of them. And so, you're talking the vowels each have a short sound and a long sound. So for example, A says ah, but it also says its own name, A, in the word. So ah in the word apple, but A in the word ape. And same, so all the vowels have short sounds and long sounds. And the letter C has two sounds. It has the hard k sound and the soft sound, for example. G also has the hard g and the soft j, like g as in grape and G as in Jim. So putting it all together. So what does this mean? So how does phonemic awareness connect to phonics? I explained a little bit, but we'll go into a little bit more depth. So once children are able to play with and manipulate language at the oral level, then they need to learn how to connect those skills to what they've learned about letters and phonics. So letters, the ability to identify each letter in the alphabet, capital letters and lowercase letters, and then knowing which sound each letter makes. And that's the phonics piece. So studies show that the two best predictors of early reading success are alphabet recognition and phonemic awareness. Plus, you need to add in, this quote is missing, that the other really important predictor of reading success is oral language competency. So how complex is your child's vocabulary? How easily are they able to understand, if you are reading a book to them? Are they able to understand the plot? Are they able to make predictions? Are they able to retell the story in their own words? So oral language skills plus alphabet recognition plus phonemic awareness, those all work together for reading and writing. When it comes to blending and segmenting on the phonological level, once you pair in letters and sounds, you blend letters and sounds together. So what you know about letters and their sounds, you're blending those sounds together to read, and you're stretching them or you're segmenting them to write. So reading equals decoding and writing equals encoding. So it's a really good poem to remember: blend to read, segment to write. So when you're looking at a word, the word cat, for example, and you're trying to decode the word cat, you need to know that a C says k, you need to know that an A says ah, and you need to know that a T says t, and you're able to put those sounds together. K, at, cat. So if you can do that orally, once you know what the letters and their sounds are, you're able to apply those two skills together. When it comes to segmenting and writing, if you wanted to write the word park, for example, so if a child is writing about going to the park, they need to be able to segment the word park. So they need to know that the first sound is, that's a phonological skill, but they also need to know that the sound that goes with the letter is and P. So they need to be able to make that connection. So park. A lot of my kids in kindergarten will write the word park as PRK or PRC, which are totally appropriate for that age. I really love this quote by Emily Buchwald: "Children are made readers on the laps of their parents." And that tells you the critically important role that parents play in their child's early learning and literacy development. So reading rich narratives to your children is really important. To me, there's a very big difference in teaching children to read or listen to stories for pleasure versus sort of learning to read. So you've got those, kind of easy decodable books that children are starting to use when they're learning how to read. But even as they learn how to read, it's still super important for you to keep reading stories to them, whether it's in your home language, if you've got a language other than English at home, you can, it's the Toronto Public Library System has so many books in various languages that you can order online and have delivered to your local library. So, children, when they hear complex narrative stories, they are learning language structure, grammar and syntax, they're learning new vocabulary. So no matter what age their children are, as they're, in their early years of school, it's still really important for you to read to them so that they have that model of language, even as they are learning to decode those more simple books. So I've got a huge list of resources here. They're all clickable links that have great guidelines. I'm not sure how this, I'm not sure if the moderator is still on here, but if you would like a copy of this slide deck, I'd be happy to send it to you. You can contact me at dottie.irvin@tdsb.on.ca. And I'd be happy to send you a PDF of this slide deck. And all of that information is available for you, and all of those links are available for you as well. Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if I'm able to take questions or not, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Mm. All right, well, if there are no questions, I'll say thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you are able to take something back to your home and work with your children. And again, phonological awareness skills can be done in any language at any time on the go. So again, if you need to reach me, my name is Dottie, Dottie, .irvin, IRVINE, @tdsb.on.ca. Thanks very much.